There's a hidden reason so many women feel like strangers to themselves. It's not because they're broken. It's not because they lack confidence. It's because they were never taught that their worth isn't something to earn. It's something to remember. Carl Jung understood that a woman's identity is forged not in the mind, but in the deep waters of her soul, where her sexual energy and self-worth are not separate, but one. But the world told her the opposite. It split her apart. It made her believe her sexuality was dangerous, her desire shameful, her body a battlefield, and then it asked her to feel powerful. No amount of affirmation can heal what shame has buried. And shame is clever. It wears masks, politeness, perfectionism, ambition. But beneath it all, many women carry a silent war inside, between who they were told to be and who they actually are. This isn't about sex. It's about life force. It's about that raw, sacred, uncontrollable energy that pulses in the female body like wildfire. When a woman is in touch with it, she doesn't just feel beautiful, she becomes magnetic. Not because others approve of her, but because she is finally whole. From the moment we are born, we are taught that the feminine must be contained. Good girls are modest. Good girls don't want too much. Good girls are quiet, sweet, and pleasing. But this good girl persona is not the soul. It's the mask. And many women, even successful, spiritual, educated women, still wear it because they were never shown an alternative. They've outgrown the role but don't know who they are without it. And in the absence of a deeper self, they perform. But you cannot fake radiance. You cannot manufacture aliveness. Carl Jung called this the disconnection of the soul. When a woman loses touch with her inner world, her instincts, her longing, her body, she becomes a reflection of what the world wants, not who she is. She might smile. She might succeed. She might even inspire others. But inside, she is starving, and she doesn't know why, until she begins to listen to the parts of her that were never allowed to speak. The feminine psyche is not linear. It is cyclical, instinctual, erotic, and chaotic. It is lunar, not solar. So when we measure feminine power through masculine standards, productivity, control, performance, we lose the wildness that makes it sacred. Feminine self-worth is not a trophy, it's a frequency. It's the quiet knowing that you were never meant to be tamed, that your beauty isn't in your image, but in your essence, that your desire is not dangerous, it's divine. But this truth is terrifying, because to claim it, a woman must let parts of her old self die. She must shed the good girl mask. She must face the fire of her own longing and not run from it. And most of all, she must stop apologizing for being powerful. Not loud, not forceful, not aggressive, but deeply, sensually, unapologetically alive. This is why sexual energy is so misunderstood. We've been told it's about seduction or control, but it's not. It's about sovereignty. It's the most primal expression of life itself. It's not something you give to get love. It's something you reclaim when you remember who you are. And when a woman allows that energy to move through her without shame, without guilt, without needing approval, she becomes unstoppable. Not in the eyes of the world, but in the eyes of her soul. Carl Jung believed that individuation, becoming your true self, required integrating the shadow. And for many women, the shadow is sexual. It's the part of them they were told to hide, their hunger, their fire, their chaos, their rage, their sensuality. But the irony is this: everything they are ashamed of holds the key to their freedom. You cannot become whole by rejecting parts of yourself. You become whole by reclaiming what the world told you to fear.
Let's be honest. Most women do not feel worthy. Not really. They perform worthiness. They overgive. They shrink. They control. They diet. They fix. They please. But underneath all of it is the aching question, am I enough? And the answer isn't in the mirror, or in a lover's gaze, or in another achievement. The answer lives in the deepest part of her, the part that remembers, the part that knows, the part that has never been touched by the world's projections. This is not a journey of becoming more. It is a sacred unraveling, a stripping away, a descent into the underworld of your own psyche, where the wounds live and where the treasure hides. Jung understood that the gold is in the dark, that you must go into the place you've avoided most. For many women, that place is their body, their desire, their shame, their unmet needs. And when they finally go there, not to conquer, but to witness, something ancient begins to awaken. And that awakening is not gentle. It doesn't come in a yoga class or a spa retreat. It comes in the grief that hits you at 3 a.m. It comes in the tears you can't explain. It comes in the moment you realized you've lived your entire life trying to be who they wanted. It comes when you stop running and you turn inward and you ask, who am I without the mask? Who am I if I stop pretending? Who am I if I let myself want what I truly want? Most women have never been asked what they truly want. Not what's acceptable, not what's achievable, but what sets their soul on fire. Because true wanting is dangerous. It disrupts. It disobeys. It reveals the parts of us that don't fit into polite society. And yet that is where your power lives, in the place you were told to hide, in the desire you buried to be loved, in the truth you whispered to yourself in the dark and called selfish. When a woman reclaims her sexual energy, she doesn't just become more seductive, she becomes more real, more embodied, more here. Her voice changes, her choices change, her presence changes. Because she's no longer performing femininity, she's inhabiting it. She's not seeking validation, she's vibrating with self-recognition. And that shift, though invisible to the world, is seismic in the soul. It is the return to herself. Self-return is not a single moment. It's a continual death and rebirth. Every time you choose your truth over your performance. Every time you say no to something that doesn't honor your body. Every time you stop fixing yourself and start feeling yourself. Every time you soften into your own presence instead of hardening into your defenses, you are coming home. And home is not a place, it's a frequency. It's the feeling of finally belonging to yourself. This is why healing cannot be separated from erotic energy. Because healing isn't about becoming pure, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness includes desire. It includes rage. It includes pleasure. It includes darkness. It includes the sacred messiness of being fully alive. When a woman denies her erotic truth, she may still look functional, but she will feel empty. Because the soul doesn't speak in achievements, it speaks in sensations. Carl Jung didn't write about sexual energy the way modern self-help books do, but he knew its archetypal power. He saw that the anima, the feminine aspect of the soul, is not just a passive muse. She is a wild, creative force that can either elevate a man's spirit or destroy his illusions. And within a woman, that same force exists, But it must be embodied, not projected, not distorted, not suppressed, but owned. When a woman owns her energy, something shifts in the room. She doesn't need to prove anything. She doesn't need to seduce. She doesn't even need to speak. Her presence says it all, not because she is loud, but because she is rooted, not because she is perfect, but because she is real. And this realness, this deep, embodied, unapologetic radiance, is what the world is starving for. Not more images, not more noise, but more truth.
And truth is not always pretty. Truth is raw. Truth is inconvenient. Truth is the trembling in your belly before you say what you really feel. Truth is the moment you walk away from something safe because it no longer feeds your soul. Truth is the refusal to keep living a lie even if the lie is socially rewarded. And for women, telling the truth often means breaking the spell of invisibility, the ancient conditioning that says, be less. There is no feminine worth without feminine rage. Not the kind that burns the world, but the kind that burns the illusions. The rage that says, no more. No more silencing. No more shame. No more shrinking. No more apologizing for being powerful, sexual, emotional, wild. That rage is sacred. It is not destructive. It is clarifying. It tells you where your boundaries are. It tells you what you've tolerated for too long. And it is the doorway back to love, real love. Because love without truth is performance, and truth without love is brutality. But when a woman brings both truth and love into her body, into her relationships, into her choices, she becomes medicine, not just for herself, but for others. She breaks cycles. She heals lineages. She doesn't do this by being perfect. She does it by being whole. And wholeness is erotic. Wholeness is magnetic. Wholeness is revolutionary. This is the power the world fears. Not the power to dominate, but the power to be deeply, fully, vulnerably alive. A woman in her power doesn't need to control others. She commands herself. She doesn't manipulate with her sexuality. She blesses with it. She doesn't use her body to perform. She lives in it like a sacred temple. And this changes everything. Not overnight, not without pain, but forever. You cannot reclaim your worth without reclaiming your body. You cannot reclaim your body without reclaiming your pleasure. And you cannot reclaim your pleasure without facing your shame. This is the spiral, the descent, the underworld journey, the archetypal death and rebirth that every woman must walk if she wants to stop surviving and start living. Carl Jung would call this the confrontation with the shadow. And he warned that it is the most dangerous journey we can take, because it requires us to meet the parts of ourselves we've buried. But he also knew that without this descent, no true transformation is possible, because the gold you seek is always hidden in the place you most fear to look. And for many women, that place is their own hunger for love, for truth, for ecstasy, for freedom. The feminine shadow is not ugly. It is wild. It is chaotic. It is erotic. It is a fierce part of you that knows what you need before your mind can explain it. It's the impulse to scream when you've stayed silent too long. It's the shiver in your spine when something is true. It's the ache in your chest when you betray yourself. And it is the sacred invitation to return, not to who you were told to be, but to who you've always been. You were not too much. You are not too emotional. You are not too sensitive. You are not too sexual. You are not too intense. You are not too anything. You are just too awake for a world that profits from your disconnection. And the moment you stop apologizing for your fire, your softness, your rhythm, your need, that is the moment you begin to rise, not in rebellion, but in remembrance. There is nothing wrong with you. There never was. What's wrong is the culture that made you forget your sacredness, that taught you to judge your body, to fear your voice, to doubt your knowing. But your soul remembers. It always has. And your pain, the ache you carry, the longing you feel, the numbness you hide, is not a flaw. It is the evidence that your deeper self is still alive, still waiting, still whispering, "Come back."
You cannot fully love yourself while fearing your own power. And power for the feminine is not about domination, it is about embodiment. It is the soft strength of a woman who no longer abandons herself. It is the grounded sensuality of someone who is at home in her skin. It is the creative chaos of a being who no longer edits herself for approval. This kind of power cannot be bought or taught. It is remembered, reclaimed, awakened. And once awakened, it refuses to go back to sleep. You may try, you may distract yourself, you may pretend, but something will always feel off until you surrender to the deeper truth. The truth that your worth has nothing to do with how desired you are by others, and everything to do with how deeply you desire your own life. Not a fantasy, not a performance, but a life that reflects the truth of who you really are underneath all the conditioning. Carl Jung warned that when we fail to integrate the shadow, it rules us from the dark. So long as your sexuality is exiled, it will show up in ways you can't control, in shame, in projection, in obsession, in numbness. But when you bring it into the light, when you meet it with compassion instead of judgment, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a source of vitality, of clarity, of wisdom, of sacred connection to the body. This is not about becoming more sexual. It's about becoming more sovereign. It's about no longer outsourcing your value. It's about releasing the performative layers and allowing your essence to lead. Your essence does not care what they think. Your essence is not interested in being liked. Your essence wants truth, freedom, connection, aliveness. And when you align with that, everything changes, not because you fixed yourself, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. The lie was never that you were too much. The lie was that you had to be less loud, less needy, less opinionated, less messy, less alive. But what if your too muchness is actually your magic? What if the parts of you that don't fit were never meant to? What if your sensitivity, your eroticism, your emotions, your dreams are not liabilities, but superpowers, not flaws to hide, but gifts to honor? Every woman is born whole, but somewhere along the way, the world teaches her to split, to separate the good from the bad, the pure from the impure, the spiritual from the sensual. But healing means integration. It means holding the paradox. It means letting the sacred and the sexual coexist in the same breath. It means no longer abandoning one part of yourself to keep another alive. It means becoming one again. And that wholeness doesn't look like a perfect image. It looks like a body that breathes deeply, a voice that shakes but speaks anyway, eyes that no longer hide, movements that don't apologize, boundaries that protect without punishing, love that doesn't abandon itself to be received, and a presence that is unmistakable, not because it's loud, but because it's true. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." For women, that unconscious material often includes inherited shame, erotic suppression, disembodiment, and people-pleasing. But fate is not fixed. Destiny is not outside of you. When you bring awareness to the parts of you that have been silenced and you love them back into life, you become the author of your own myth. This is not a self-help trick. It is a sacred rebellion, a spiritual return, a psychological integration, a soul initiation. It is the moment you realize your sexuality was never about being attractive. It was about being alive. It was about your creative force, your instinct, your presence, your magnetism. It was about the wild woman in you, the one who remembers what the world tried to make you forget.
And when you finally stop trying to be good and you choose to be whole, the game changes. You stop chasing love. You start embodying it. You stop proving your worth. You start honoring it. You stop seeking permission. You start leading yourself. And that leadership is not a performance. It is a vibration, a sacred yes, a holy no, a divine return. The feminine is not a style. It is not a brand. It is not a look. It is a way of being. And that way has been buried under centuries of distortion, but it is not lost. It lives in your bones. It lives in your breath. It lives in your womb, your tears, your laughter, your anger, your rhythm, and it will rise. Not because you force it, but because you allow it, because you stop resisting the truth of who you are. You are not here to perform femininity. You are here to embody it. You are not here to be desired by others. You are here to desire your own life. You are not here to be a mirror for their projections. You are here to be a portal for your own power. And when you step into that, not in theory, but in sensation, you stop being manageable. You start being mythical. This is your myth. This is your return. And no one can walk it for you, but you are not alone. Every time you choose your truth, every time you honor your desire, every time you meet your shame with compassion, you send ripples through the collective. You remind other women what it means to be whole. And in doing so, you don't just heal yourself. You heal us all. So I'll leave you with this. What part of your feminine power have you been taught to fear and are now ready to reclaim? Tell me in the comments below. This space is yours. Sacred, safe, soulful. And if you felt seen, stirred, or softened by this journey, I invite you to subscribe. This channel is your sanctuary for truth, for healing, for rebirth. Welcome home.